In John 15, verses 1 and 2, Jesus says this. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. And I want to talk for a moment about this idea of pruning. Vines in that time could become long and rambling, expending a lot of the plant's energy on growing extra wood rather than on bearing fruit. And at the same time, dead or diseased wood could become very unhealthy for the plant. And so farmers back then, as well as today, prune plants in order to make them more fruitful. And just like a vine or a tree, we need to be pruned and reshaped at different times and in different ways in our life so that we can be more fruitful. And in fact, Jesus says this is exactly what God does. So what exactly does that look like? Well, it might look like this: God removing dead or dying things that are past their prime, things that are no longer useful, removing what's infected or diseased, things that are unhelpful, unhealthy, maybe even toxic, removing things that are hindering you, taking up space and time that could be better used in other ways, removing things to refocus us or sharpen our focus, removing things to redirect our energy and help us to grow in the right direction. And another really important thing that pruning can do is that it often stimulates growth in plants and in us when it happens. Now, the truth is that pruning also can be really hard sometimes. It involves change. It involves letting go of things. It involves loss. And so in the midst of it, we have to stay focused on the payoff, that God prunes us in order for us to be more fruitful. And I really believe that over the long run, we'll more than make up for anything that we may have let go of or lost. And really, in fact, our goal should be to work with God in the pruning process. I think we should try to reevaluate our lives every so often and ask God to show us if there's anything that really needs to be pruned in us because it's holding us back in some way. We need to ask questions like, am I dragging around dead and diseased branches with me? Am I holding on to something that God really is seeking to prune from my life and I'm standing in the way? And what God needs to prune can be just about anything. It can be an unhelpful attitude, a habit, it can be even a relationship. It's really anything that's standing in the way of us living into the fullness that God calls us to in our lives and the fullness of our relationship with Him. Now, one last thing. Not every loss in this life is a result of God's pruning. Sometimes life just changes. Sometimes we just experience loss, big losses, small losses. But there's also a promise that we need to remember in the midst of that. And that's that God can use even the hard things in our life for our good. And so we can trust Him with those things too. We also need to realize that oftentimes we're not going to be able to really know whether a loss was pruning or just a twist and turn of life until some time has gone by and we can look back on it and really maybe understand what God was doing or why something happened. Last thing is this. In this time of the pandemic, life has changed a great deal. And I think, in fact, it's a time when God really may be seeking to use what's going on to prune and reshape our lives in different ways. So I want to call each of us to really be open to that process, to be asking ourselves, what may I be dragging around that I need to let go of? How may God wanting to be reshaping my life in a different way so that I might be more fruitful?